Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay paper number 27, the Administrative Report of the Water and Sewerage Authority for the fiscal year 2014 to 2015.
The Minister of Labour.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers, 28 and 29. The Annual Report of the Registration, Recognition, and Certification Board for the years ending 2016 and 2017.
The Minister of Tourism, Culture and the Arts.
Madam Speaker, on behalf of the Minister of Tourism, Culture and the Arts, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Paper number 30, the Administrative Report of the Ministry of Tourism for fiscal year 2018, and paper number 31, the White Paper on the National Cultural Policy of Trinidad and Tobago, 2020 to 2025.
The Leader of the House.
Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. Paper number 32, the response of the Ministry of Community Development, Culture and the Arts to the petition to remove Christopher Columbus monuments in Trinidad and Tobago, presented in the House of Representatives on July 1st, 2020. Paper number 33, the Administrative Report of the Ministry of Planning and Sustainable Development for the period October 2014 to September 2015. Papers 34 and 35, the Administrative Report of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago for the years ended September 2016 and 2017. Paper number 36, the Ministerial Response of the Ministry of Labour and Small Enterprise Development to the 17th Report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on the inquiry into persons living in poverty and extreme poverty in Trinidad and Tobago, with specific focus on vulnerable groups. Papers 37 to 40. The responses to the 18th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on the treatment of migrants, with specific focus on the rights to education, employment, and protection from sexual exploitation. These responses are from the Ministries of Labour and Small Enterprise Development, Education, National Security, and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Papers 41 and 42. The ministerial responses to the 15th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on the current provisions for the education of children who require special education programs and services in public, primary, and secondary schools. These responses are from the Ministries of Planning and Development and Education. Paper number 43, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Education to the 16th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on male academic performance in public, primary, and secondary schools. Paper number 44, the response of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to the 12th report of the Joint Select Committee on Human Rights, Equality and Diversity on the sexual exploitation of children in Trinidad and Tobago, with specific focus on child prostitution and child pornography. Papers 45 and 46, the responses to the 9th report of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure on an inquiry into the policies for the promotion of non-traditional methods of farming, including digital farming technology. These responses are from the Tobago House of Assembly and the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries. Papers 47 to 52. The ministerial responses to the 10th report of the Joint Select Committee on Land and Physical Infrastructure on an inquiry into flood alleviation and control measures for major river basins and drainage catchments in Trinidad and Tobago subjected to major flooding over the past years. These responses are from the following ministries: Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, Rural Development and Local Government, Public Utilities, Works and Transport, Energy and Energy Industries, and Health. Paper number 53, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government to the 14th report of the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commissions and Statutory Authorities, including the THA, on an inquiry into the financial oversight and financial management systems at municipal corporations. Papers 54 and 55, the responses to the 13th report of the Joint Select Committee on Local Authorities, Service Commissions, and Statutory Authorities, including the THA, on an inquiry into the efficiency and effectiveness of the National Emergency Ambulance Service. These responses are from the Ministry of Health and the Tobago House of Assembly. Paper number 56, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Public Administration to the 28th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2018. Paper number 57, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Planning and Development to the 26th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of the Environmental Management Authority for the financial years 2010 to 2012 and the authority's expenditure and internal controls for the years 2010 to 2018. Paper number 58, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Communications to the 29th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of the National Library and Information System of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial years 2009 to 2011 and the authority's expenditure and internal controls for the years 2009 to 2018. Paper number 59, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries to the 34th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year 2019. Paper number 60, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries to the 16th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago Electricity Commission for the financial years 2012 to 2015. Papers 61 and 62, the responses to the 13th report of the Public Accounts Committee on the examination of the report of the Auditor General on the public accounts of the Republic of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial years 2016, 2017, and 2018, with specific reference to the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, and follow up on the implementation of the recommendations in the 4th, 14th, and 20th reports of the Public Accounts Committee. These responses are from the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries and the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Paper number 63, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Finance to the 25th report of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee on the examination of the audited financial statements of the Trinidad and Tobago International Financial Center Management Company Limited for the years 2010 to 2017. Papers 64 and 65. The ministerial responses to the 23rd report of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee on an examination of the audited financial statements of Invest TT Limited for the years 2014 to 2017. These responses are from the Ministries of Education, and the Attorney General and Legal Affairs. Paper number 66, the response of the Personnel Department to the 24th report of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee on the examination of the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the Export-Import Bank of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the financial years 2012 to 2017. Paper number 67, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Works and Transport to the 26th report of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee on the examination of the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the National Helicopter Services Limited for the financial years 2008 to 2014. Paper number 68, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Rural Development and Local Government to the 27th report of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee on the examination of the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the Rural Development Company of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for the financial years 2012 to 2017. Paper number 69, the ministerial response of the Ministry of Trade and Industry to the 28th report of the Public Accounts Enterprises Committee on the examination of the audited accounts, balance sheets, and other financial statements of the National Export Facilitation Organization of Trinidad and Tobago Limited for fiscal years 2014 and 2015. Thank you very kindly, Madam Speaker.
The Minister of Finance.
Madam Speaker, I'm advised that the matter with respect to the laying of the documents will take place later in the speech. During the speech?
I think the procedure shows that.
So I'll do that now.
Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Minister of Finance. After the laying of the documents, a motion will be taken and then the bill will be introduced.
Madam Speaker, I have the honor to lay the following papers. The draft estimates of expenditure for the financial year 2021. The draft estimates details of estimates of recurrent expenditure for the financial year 2021. The draft estimates of revenue and expenditure of the statutory boards and similar bodies and of the Tobago House of Assembly for the financial year 2021. The draft estimates of development program for the financial year 2021. The draft estimates of revenue for the financial year 2021. The social sector investment program 2021. The public sector investment program Trinidad 2021. The public sector investment program Tobago 2021. The state enterprises investment program 2021. The review of the economy 2020.
From committees, Prime Minister's questions, urgent questions, questions on notice, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the House on definite matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers, personal explanations, motions relating to the business or sittings of the House and moved by a minister.
Leader of the House.
Very kindly, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, further to my conversation with the Chief Whip on this matter, I now move that for the budget debate, the speaking time allotted to the Minister of Finance and the first responder on the opposition bench be unlimited, and that all other members thereafter be allotted 45 minutes speaking time with no extensions. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Honorable members, the question is that for the budget debate, the speaking time allotted to the Minister of Finance and the first responder on the opposition bench be unlimited, and that all other members thereafter be allotted 45 minutes speaking time with no extensions. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any against? The ayes have it.
Introduction of bills. The Appropriation Financial Year 2021 Bill 2020 in the name of the Minister of Finance.
The Minister of Finance.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I beg to move that a bill entitled An Act to Provide for the Service of Trinidad and Tobago for the financial year ending on the 30th day of September 2021 be read a second time. Madam Speaker, I rise with a deep sense of humility to present the sixth budget of this PNM administration for the financial year 2020-2021. On August 10th, 2020, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago provided the People's National Movement with a renewed mandate to govern Trinidad and Tobago under the astute leadership of the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley. Our citizens voted not only for a continuation of political stability, but also reposed their faith in the economic policies and programs of the PNM as set out in our 2020 manifesto. The electorate made the right choice. Madam Speaker, having earned a second term, our team has hit the ground running. I wish to commend all members of the government, especially our new colleagues, for being able to keep the country fully functional and operational in the 2 months since the general election. This budget reflects our understanding of the requirements of our country for the medium term to ensure that our economic recovery is as strong as possible. The process is full of challenges, uncertainties, and opportunities. And at this time, I wish to express my appreciation to the public officials in the Ministry of Finance for their continued high sense of public duty and technical expertise. They have ensured that the budget was prepared within a tight time frame with appropriate technical reviews and assessments of domestic and international economic conditions and the impact of current and proposed policies. The many and varied submissions of external stakeholders have also been reviewed and incorporated into the budget where feasible. As is customary, I have today laid in Parliament 11 documents which have incorporated all relevant assessments and views into the plans and programs to be pursued by this administration over the medium term. Madam Speaker, I am deeply honored that the Prime Minister has again assigned me the responsibility for the Ministry of Finance. This duty allows me to continue the role which I assumed in 2015 and managed for the last 5 years, notwithstanding tremendous difficulties. During that period, we ensured that over 75,000 workers in the state sector were paid in full and on time, schools and hospitals functioned, and all government services were delivered effectively. We had to reverse the stagnation brought about by the precipitous decline in oil and gas production and commodity prices, stabilize the economy by repairing the fiscal accounts which had deteriorated significantly, and we had to improve our system of governance with transparent processes in order to create the conditions for economic stabilization and growth in an environment of trust and confidence. By early fiscal 2020, the economic contraction of the past had been alleviated, and we had emerged from the serious decline in the 2016 to 2017 period, where we lost 20 billion in annual energy sector revenues, brought about by the first collapse in oil and gas prices and an inappropriate energy sector taxation regime. The latest data from the CSO now shows that from a decline of almost 6% in 2016, we restored stability to our GDP in 2018, with growth returning to a balance of 0.1% in that year. On this note, Madam Speaker, I wish to make it clear that we in the Ministry of Finance do not generate actual GDP data or actual oil and gas production figures and or make energy forecasts. We are provided with this information by the relevant agencies. However, based on the data available to us, if everything had remained on track, the economy was projected to return to sustainable growth in 2021. Indeed, at the start of fiscal 2020, inflation was at 1%, down from 5% in 2015, which was beneficial both to the economy and citizens. Government revenue had increased by $10 billion per year, or 27% over the 2016 figure. Through fiscal consolidation and careful management, unsustainable expenditure was being brought down to a manageable level in the $50 billion range, representing a decrease of 20% over the 2014 to 2015 level. The fiscal deficit was being systematically reduced and had dropped to 2.5% of GDP in 2019 from 9.5% of GDP in 2016. Interest rates were stable and low, thus creating the conditions for private sector investment. The public sector debt was stabilizing at 65% within international benchmarks at the time. The balance of payments was recovering, the exchange rate was stable, and foreign exchange reserves and the Heritage and Stabilization Fund remained at high levels in the vicinity of US $7 billion and US $6 billion respectively to deal with emerging shocks and uncertain scenarios. As we entered 2020, the country was considered by all external agencies as capable of meeting any external shock. Indeed, during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic, in June of 2020, this year, we were sufficiently creditworthy to easily raise US $500 million on the external market in a few hours at a very good interest rate of 4.5% over 10 years. Accordingly, at the start of fiscal 2020 last year, we look forward to the re-emergence of a resilient economy. However, as has occurred with every other country in the world, this picture was suddenly and drastically altered with the onset of the pandemic. On March 11, the World Health Organization declared the COVID-19 virus to be a pandemic. And on March 13, COVID-19 hit our shores with our first confirmed case. Since that time, we have been witnessing the devastating human and economic toll which the coronavirus is leaving in its wake as it spreads around the world. As of yesterday, there were approximately 35 million confirmed cases of the virus in 235 countries, areas and territories, and tragically a high death rate of over 1 million. In Trinidad and Tobago, after containing the spread of the virus between March to July to low levels, we began to experience an increase in infections. This increase has by and large been attributed to the gradual reopening of the economy, which began in June. We are now in the community spread phase as defined by the World Health Organization. But recently, as a result of our public health restrictions, including the emphasis on physical distancing, the August 31st mandate for the wearing of masks, sanitization, the regular washing of hands, limitation of group sizes, and other good health and safety practices, we have been witnessing reductions in infections. If trends continue, hopefully, we can take decisions in the near future with a view to balancing our efforts to contain the virus with the need to maintain our livelihoods. Madam Speaker, at this time, I would like to express our sympathy to all the families and communities which have been adversely affected by this pandemic, and in particular the families and relatives of those who have died. I would also like to commend and thank our devoted and hardworking healthcare personnel, medical practitioners, and essential workers for their collective responsibility for ensuring the containment of this pandemic. I also wish to express my sincere thanks on behalf of a grateful population to the Honorable Prime Minister, Dr. Keith Rowley, for his steady hand and courageous and sterling leadership in taking Trinidad and Tobago through the many challenges presented by the COVID-19 crisis. Madam Speaker, the global economy initially froze and then dramatically declined as the effects of the pandemic escalated, but now appears to be on a slow recovery path as many economies are reopening in the context of demand-inducing fiscal stimulus and similar policy actions. It is hoped that a vibrant global economy would eventually emerge with a return of confidence arising from the availability of affordable and effective vaccines for the virus. However, our active and enlightened social agenda during the pandemic has averted marginalization and significantly alleviated poverty. This was done by way of a well-targeted social safety net to protect the vulnerable from the short-term costs and dislocation of the adjustment process. Our approach has been to ensure a systematic but safe and measured resumption of economic activity. The protection of the lives of our citizens is our primary objective, and our decisions on the reopening of business activity are thus based on the best available scientific and medical advice. We understood that our economy would be shuttered by the debilitating effects of the virus. All available resources and expertise were therefore mobilized to design and implement a comprehensive health, economic, and social response to COVID-19. We provided and continue to provide our health sector with all necessary resources. Additional medical personnel have been hired. Medical equipment and personal protective equipment have been sourced. Hospitals and healthcare facilities have been upgraded and commissioned, and specific sites dedicated to treating infected people. Step-down convalescing facilities are in place. We have created a robust parallel health system to respond specifically to the pandemic, which has been and continues to be an extremely effective approach. This parallel system is carefully monitored to ensure that sufficient capacity is in place to address any unforeseen shock. Madam Speaker, our package of policies to address the unprecedented challenges posed by the pandemic has been comprehensive, even in the context of significant erosion of oil and gas and tax revenues. Early on, we recognized that economic activity would be curtailed and that several economic sectors would be seriously affected. Our fiscal and monetary response, therefore, has provided a bridge to support businesses and individuals to help to ensure that the recovery will be as strong as possible. Unfortunately, as a major part of our response to the pandemic, we have had to close our borders since March 22nd. This has had serious and continuing negative social and economic effects, but there was no sensible alternative available during this period of crisis. Notwithstanding this, we responded quickly and decisively to the pandemic with a broad set of policy measures aimed at assisting the poor and vulnerable, protecting businesses, jobs, and incomes, maintaining financial resilience, and sustaining economic activity. A safety net for the most vulnerable households and businesses was immediately established. It was appropriately targeted at a cost of $6 billion, of which we have spent over $4 billion so far. We are leaving no one behind. We established a social and humanitarian support program in which 25,101 grants have been paid under the food support program. 50,904 grants have been paid to individuals who had been retrenched or who had their incomes reduced, and who are now additional beneficiaries under the food support program. 20,500 grants have been paid to households which receive meals from the school feeding program and which are not current beneficiaries of food support. 42,451 grants have been paid as income support to current beneficiaries of the public assistance and disability assistance grant programs. 33,813 individuals who lost their jobs or had their incomes reduced have received 81,179 grants, amounting to $129.8 million in salary relief or income support. 2,818 grants were paid to senior citizens who have not yet received their senior citizens' pensions, with each grant equating to $1,500 in food support. 488 grants were paid to individuals who had not yet received their disability assistance grants, with each grant equating to $1,000 in food support. 1,400 emergency hampers were provided to families in urgent need during the stay-at-home period. 25,000 food vouchers, which included fresh produce, poultry, and a grocery voucher, were provided to families in need. 3,770 families have received rental assistance. $30 million has been given to our religious bodies for food distribution, which in turn distributed 49,330 hampers to needy persons. A one-time fuel relief grant in an amount of $2,000 is being provided to active maxi-taxi owners, as well as a one-time fuel relief grant in the sum of $750 to registered owners of active taxis. To date, 1,720 owners of maxi-taxis and 253 taxi operators have benefited at a total cost of over $21 million. So far, 343 of our cultural artists have received grants of $5,000 each. 300 nationals who were stranded overseas have received cash grants of up to $1,000 US. And 359,000 cloth face masks were distributed free to the public. Additionally, Madam Speaker, we provided financial support for companies and individuals to keep people in jobs. As such, 25,095 individuals received accelerated income tax refunds. 5,010 small and medium enterprises with a per VAT cycle threshold of up to $500,000 received in cash accelerated VAT refunds. 460 companies with up to $10 million in refunds per VAT cycle received fully tradable VAT bonds amounting to $3 billion. 142 small and medium enterprises have received zero-interest government-guaranteed loans. 50 business owners have received concessionary loans through the credit union loan facility so far. 5,000 micro-enterprises will receive grants under the Microenterprise Grant Program. To date, 528 grants were disbursed at a cost of $4.8 million. 124 importers of essential items have received US $75 million through the special import forex window from the Exim Bank. We have approved an additional US $75 million recently for this initiative. And government payments due to contractors and suppliers in an amount of $2 billion are being expeditiously settled. And that is not all. We maintain the flow of credit to the business sector. The reserve requirement for the commercial banks has been reduced from 17% to 14%, and the repo rate from 5% to 3.5%, creating substantial access to credit through over $12 billion in excess liquidity. Commercial banks have reduced their prime lending rates from an average of 9.5% to 7.5%. Banks are providing a moratorium on mortgages and installment loan payments. Penalties are being waived on overdraft facilities on a month-by-month basis. Credit cards now have reduced rates. Banks are being encouraged to reduce mortgage interest rates. Credit unions are being encouraged to exercise forbearance. The Trinidad and Tobago Mortgage Finance Limited and the Home Mortgage Bank are deferring mortgage payments up to 3 months in the first instance. The Housing Development Corporation is deferring mortgage payments of up to 2 months, which will be extended in the context of the evolving situation. And import duty and VAT have been waived or remitted on computers and certain medical and emergency supplies being imported to mitigate the COVID-19 pandemic. Madam Speaker, we also made special arrangements for Tobago. We have provided the Tobago House of Assembly with $50 million to fund the Tobago Regional Health Authority with its COVID-19 related expenses. We provided $5 million to the Enterprise Development Program to assist small businesses in Tobago. We made available a special fund of $50 million to provide grants to Tobago hoteliers for hotel upgrade and financial support through the THA. Madam Speaker, there is no question that fiscal 2020 was exceptionally difficult. We had forecasted a budget deficit of $5.3 billion, or 3.4% of GDP for 2020. With the collapse in oil and gas revenue, and in the context of the new pandemic-related expenditure, we are now forecasting a deficit of $16.8 billion, or around 11% of GDP for fiscal 2020. It should be noted, Madam Speaker, that this is not substantially different from our forecast in June in this very place. To finance this deficit, we have relied and are relying upon both domestic and international institutions and markets to finance the extraordinary COVID-19 expenditure. We tapped into the domestic capital market under the Development Loans Act and utilized just over $1 billion of the $10 billion available. We made emergency drawdowns from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund, approximating US $900 million, and leaving the fund balance at US $5.73 billion at the end of September 2020, higher than the prevailing balance of US $5.65 billion at the time of our assumption of office in September 2015, confirming its well-managed portfolio of assets. We sourced $300 million US from various multilateral agencies, US $20 million from the World Bank, US $130 million from the Inter-American Development Bank, and US $150 million from the Development Bank of Latin America, also known as CAF. We also sourced a net $250 million on the external capital market. Madam Speaker, we expect 2021 to be another challenging year. Nevertheless, in 2021, our objective is to keep the economy moving, to stimulate economic activity, to continue to provide financial assistance to individuals and businesses where necessary and appropriate, and to keep as many people employed as is possible. We recognize that there is no clear path for the reopening of the economy. We are aware the longer the economy stays at a less than optimal production level, the longer it would take to get it going again, and the more protracted the economic slowdown. Over the past months, utilizing local expertise and experiences, we have designed a post-COVID roadmap to recovery to assist us with guidance and advice on what we should do to meet developmental and growth objectives. Accordingly, the theme for this budget is resetting the economy for growth and innovation. The post-COVID economy will be shaped by decisions made in the fight against the virus. The profound uncertainty about the virus and its trajectory, and about how other countries would respond, dictate that the policy processes must evolve in the context of constant monitoring and review. In particular, we can only avoid conflicts arising from the interplay of political and economic forces and make a planned and safe exit from the crisis through collective action at all levels of the society. In this regard, our political and economic institutions must cooperate to fight against the virus, to collectively eliminate it. We must strive to do so without being sidetracked by political differences or self-interest. Madam Speaker, our transformational and ambitious medium-term plan is being implemented even with the global economy in a fragile position. Since the outbreak of the pandemic, the International Monetary Fund has issued on 2 occasions its World Economic Outlook and its Global Financial Stability Report in April 2020 and in June 2020. In the April World Economic Outlook report, the projection for global output for 2020 contracted substantially by 3% from 3.3%. In the June report, the projection was further revised downwards to 4.9%. Global trade is expected to collapse by nearly 12% in 2020. A deep downturn is taking place in both advanced economies, where growth will contract by 8%, and excluding China, emerging market and developing countries will contract by 3% and 5% respectively. Of course, more progress on vaccines could substantially bolster confidence and lead to better growth outcomes with a favorable impact on Trinidad and Tobago. Let me go now to some institutional matters. A newly instituted tax administration system will be further consolidated with the commencement of the property tax regime in financial year 2021. The Property Tax Act was assented to on December 31st, 2009. At about the same time that the Property Tax Act was passed, substantial amendments were made to the Valuation of Land Act by Act number 17 of 2009. These 2 pieces of legislation were intended or are intended to provide a comprehensive tax regime under management of a single assessment agency and a single collection agency to replace the former system of land and building taxes and house rates, which produced inconsistent and inequitable consequences and was not being administered efficiently or effectively in accordance with the statutory provisions. Madam Speaker, this government has been working assiduously to produce the required valuation rule, notwithstanding numerous challenges. To expedite the process and validate the information on the valuation rule, the Commission of Valuation will, in the near future, be making mandatory requests of property owners under Section 29 of the Valuation of Land Act for the provision of information in an appropriate format. The objective is to commence the collection of property tax in fiscal 2021, starting with residential properties, and we continue to assure property owners that the rates of this tax will be both fair and reasonable and will not present an onerous burden on them. The taxation of commercial, industrial, and agricultural properties will follow in that order. In keeping with the government's digitalization thrust and COVID-19 social distancing protocols, an online option is also being developed for the submission of information by property owners. This online system should be operational shortly. Turn now to the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. As indicated earlier, the net asset value of the Heritage and Stabilization Fund at US $5.73 billion was higher at the end of September 2020 than it was when he took office in September 2015, despite withdrawals totaling US $1.6 billion over the period 2016 to 2020. Our sovereign wealth fund has thus performed remarkably well, and in 2020 alone, after losing US $1 billion in value following the collapse of world stock markets in February and March, the fund has recovered every dollar it has lost through the astute management of the fund managers. As I mentioned before, the government decided to introduce a comprehensive package of measures to deal with the unprecedented crisis created by COVID-19. The package included a partial lockdown of the economy, which led to a slump in economic activity and a significant revenue shortfall, affecting both energy and non-energy revenues. There was thus an urgent need for increased government spending to mitigate the impact of the crisis. Addressing this fiscal gap required a substantial increase in available resources, which the government decided to raise through a combination of local and foreign borrowing, supported by withdrawals from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund. On March 26, the government presented and the Parliament approved an amendment to the Heritage and Stabilization Fund Act to allow for withdrawals of up to US $1.5 billion during the financial year in the event of a health crisis, a natural disaster, or a precipitous drop in budgeted revenue from oil and gas. As indicated earlier, as a result of COVID-19, the fiscal deficit for 2020 is now estimated at $16.8 billion, over $10 billion more than originally envisaged. To support the financing of this deficit, US $900 million, or just over 6 billion TT, has been withdrawn from the Heritage and Stabilization Fund under the recent amendment. It is worth noting that there is nothing unusual about this, as governments all over the world have been turning to their sovereign wealth funds to finance the impact of the structural change in global energy markets and to deal with the economic fallout resulting from the COVID-19 pandemic. Now turn to macroeconomic indicators. Madam Speaker, Trinidad and Tobago's output is now projected to contract in real terms by 6.8% in 2020, with recovery driven by an emerging digital economy and a recovering global economy expected by 2022. Given these considerations, inflation is likely to continue at very low levels, between 1% and 2% up to 2022. Since the onset of the virus in March 2020, fiscal policy has provided significant support to our economy, the items I described earlier. Initially, we resorted to public borrowing to limit the impact to the incomes of our citizens. Let me emphasize that by borrowing today to support the economy, we are avoiding a bigger loss of output and jobs which could damage the economy and society for years to come, thereby putting our annual budgets under continual stress and strain. This approach is also being adopted by virtually all advanced and emerging economies in the world. This notwithstanding, our ratio of public sector debt to GDP is still lower than several other comparator countries. For example, the debt to GDP ratio in the United Kingdom at the end of July 2020 reached 100.5% of GDP, an increase of 20.4% compared with the same point in 2019. It was the first time that the UK's debt to GDP ratio was above 100% since 1961. Additionally, analysts expect that India's debt to GDP ratio could reach as high as 87.5% in 2020. In the euro area, the average debt to GDP ratio is also expected to cross 85% in 2020, with an average decline in GDP in European countries of 10%. In the Latin American region, debt to GDP ratios in several countries are expected to cross 100% in this year, with economic contractions averaging over 9%. In the Caribbean, the major economies such as Barbados and Jamaica continue to struggle with debt to GDP ratios in excess of 100%. We are projecting that once our economy recovers, our debt to GDP ratio, which has reached 80% so far in 2020, in the context of the fiscal support for COVID-19 and economic contraction, could return to its pre-crisis level of 65% by 2023-2024. We are thus focusing on our medium-term fiscal responsibility approach to target the emergence of a primary fiscal balance in 2022 and a reduction in the fiscal deficit from 5.5% of GDP in 2021 to 2% of GDP in 2023. We are determined to achieve this objective as we derive the benefits from the recovery of the economy and the phasing out of a significant part of government guarantees in the medium term. Our financing costs have been relatively moderate with stable and low interest rates. Under this baseline scenario, we believe that the public sector debt is entirely manageable and affordable. We continue to have significant financial buffers. At the end of September 2020, our foreign exchange reserves were US $7.3 billion, and our assets in the Heritage and Stabilization Fund were US $5.7 billion. The combined total of US $13 billion equates to approximately 59% of GDP. We also expect that an improvement in the balance of payments will contribute significantly to the generation of foreign exchange. The current account of the balance of payments is also projected to be in surplus by 2022 in the context of increasing energy exports and a stabilizing level of imports. Looking forward, an important priority will be to boost jobs. Based on the baseline forecast, we believe that our policies to support incomes which add to aggregate demand through direct government spending and make it easier for firms to hire people will ensure that our unemployment rate returns to previous levels of 4 to 5%. Institutional building. Madam Speaker, the opposition is in a position to provide the required parliamentary support for certain pieces of legislation which are in the public interest. These pieces of legislation have already been subject to parliamentary scrutiny and consideration, and we should have these institutions in place in the shortest possible time frame. Let's start with the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority. Madam Speaker, the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority should have already been established by the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority Bill, which was laid in Parliament in 2018 and scrutinized by a parliamentary committee for over 1 year. And we look forward to the support of the opposition for this critical piece of legislation in this new term. Revenue authorities have been proven to be extremely efficient in the collection of public revenue in those countries where they have been established. And such an authority in Trinidad and Tobago is expected to bring significant improvement in tax collection, thereby reducing the tax gap by as much as $5 billion per year. In preparing for its eventual conversion to the Trinidad and Tobago Revenue Authority, the Inland Revenue Division is already building institutional capacity in several areas, including integrity of the taxpayer database, risk management, voluntary compliance, timely filing of tax declaration, timely payment of taxes, accurate reporting and declarations, effective tax dispute resolution, and effective revenue management. I now turn to the Gaming Commission. Madam Speaker, we believe that a Gaming Commission must be urgently put in place with the required parliamentary support for the Gaming and Betting Control Bill. Our unregulated gambling sector, with its associated local and international criminal activity, cannot continue in its present form, nor can we afford the low level of tax compliance in that sector. Bringing the Gaming and Betting Commission into force will ensure that the sector plays a key and legitimate role in the generation of taxes and in fostering economic growth, including the generation of foreign exchange and high-quality employment. We hope that in this term, the opposition will give the necessary support for this important and sorely needed legislation. The National Statistical Institute. Timely economic and business decision-making will also be driven by the transformation by the Ministry of Planning and Development of the Central Statistical Office into the National Statistical Institute. The legislation to create this modern statistical institute, which requires the support of the opposition, has also languished in the Parliament for several years. But to compete in today's world, publication of trade and economic data, including employment and financial data, must occur in real time. National Insurance Board. Madam Speaker, we are ensuring that our national institutional mix remains resilient and capable of meeting the demands of a modern economy. We will ensure that the National Insurance Board remains able to provide our citizens with income security for various needs, including retirement, maternity, employment injury, and funeral expenses. With expenditure on benefits now exceeding contribution income, we will take whatever steps necessary to maintain the integrity and viability of the National Insurance Board, including a serious examination of the need to extend the retirement age to 65. Procurement. With the Office of the Procurement Regulator already in place, the soon-to-be-proclaimed Procurement Act and associated making of regulations, which are subject to affirmative resolution of Parliament, will ensure that government decisions will be transparently managed, adding significant value for money in the procurement of goods and services. Public administration. Madam Speaker, in this post-pandemic era, we are improving the efficiency of the public sector apparatus. With increasing technology, digitization and digitalization, we are improving public sector performance while at the same time containing the growth in expenditure. As we undertake diverse approaches to reform key institutional arrangements, utilizing an e-governance ecosystem, we will transform workforce human resource management arrangements. We will change budget practices and procedures, and we will introduce results-oriented approaches to policy execution. We have been able to reduce our annual public expenditure to approximately $10 billion from 63, with $10 billion being channeled to the direct public service of approximately 62,300 individuals. Furthermore, transfers to statutory authorities and state enterprises account for another 12,000 plus employees. As an initial step, and in the context of a constrained revenue situation, we are freezing the filling of all vacancies in the public sector. A digital society. In keeping with our theme, we have revisited our standard model of economic development. Business closures and work-from-home arrangements are generating solutions for improving productive processes throughout the wider economy and for identifying new sectors and export-capable activities in a changing business climate. We are now convinced that going forward, our developmental model must be anchored on the newly emerging digital economy. We are already into a new life cycle of accessing new markets and new models: e-business, e-commerce, e-government, e-banking, among others. We are doing so through the coexistence of computer systems, the internet, telecommunications and electronics, and their sustainable development. Businesses are experiencing radical changes in their efficiency to reduce transaction costs. Madam Speaker, a fully digital Trinidad and Tobago is central to the growth and diversification of the economy. In this context, the Ministry of Public Administration and Digital Transformation has been charged with the responsibility of directing the necessary changes to accomplish this objective, and in particular, has been mandated to ensure that high-speed broadband internet access, accompanied by the requisite ICT infrastructure, is made available for all citizens. The focus will be on schools and institutions, preschool, primary, secondary, and tertiary, as well as other important institutions and agencies. The Ministry has also been mandated to create an electronic population register, or e-identity, for every citizen to facilitate data transmission to all agencies. This is expected to streamline processes and identify and eliminate waste, duplication, and inefficiency in the provision of government services. Initially, a digital public service is proposed through an e-governance ecosystem involving the National Single Electronic Window, TT BizLink, which will reduce overall processing times for business-related services and improving our trade performance and competitiveness. The developed TT automated construction system, already in place, which will reduce the time taken to receive planning approval from the Town and Country Planning Division and building permits from municipal corporations, among other agencies. A new government service delivery model, which is already facilitating or will facilitate issuance of passports within 2 weeks, registration of motor vehicles and issuance of driver's permits, registration for tax, tax returns, tax clearance and payments, issuing of all licensing arrangements, including liquor licenses, registration of companies, conveyancing and land registry, delivery of pensions and social grants, including salary and income support, public assistance, food cards, disability assistance, rent relief, and so on. In the context of the utilization of digital access tools, including government services, by the national economy, ease of access to digital commerce will be provided through a range of digital cultural shift activities and a national digital database. We will facilitate the implementation of several major projects, such as student broadband availability, digital procurement solutions, digital mobile money solutions, free public Wi-Fi, nationwide 4G and 5G network, development of a national digital database, and delivery of a wide range of government services. In so doing, the focus will be on young people to facilitate their participation in a technological transformational process. Appropriate funding and incentives will be provided for all taxes have already been removed on computers, and the remaining taxes on digital equipment listed in our manifesto, such as taxes on mobile and digital equipment and cell phones, will be removed in the Finance Act in December 2020. Additionally, it is proposed over the next 2 years, government grants will be available for startup businesses. Tax credits will be available to businesses which invest in tech startups or new tech businesses, in technology solutions and digitization, as well in businesses which create employment in the technology industry, particularly for young people. Finance and incentives where applicable will be provided to entrepreneurs engaged in software and mobile application development, user interface design, call center operations, quality assurance bug testers, animators, visual effects, and electronic media, and a tech investment fund and a tech promotions and development company will be established, and it will be available to all viable tech startups and new tech businesses. It is expected that the new digital economy will transform all industries and be vastly different from the old economy, where growth was driven by the mechanization of production. We expect that digitalization will be a primary driver of economic efficiency, productivity, and improved living standards. I turn now to agriculture. Madam Speaker, as this country developed its oil and gas sector, as well as its manufacturing sector, and as our international trading arrangements developed along the lines of a free market system, the contribution of agriculture to national gross domestic product declined despite consistent investments by the state. As a proportion of gross domestic product, the contribution of agriculture has been insignificant, accounting for approximately 1% or less over the past decade. Even with numerous generous incentives and the availability of cheap state land for production, investors and farmers have been unable to overcome consistently the structural impediments inherent in the agricultural sector. The number one reason has been a decades-old malaise in the renewal of state land leases and an almost impossibility to be granted new leases. Decades ago, this malaise cracked the willpower of farmers and farming families, and while production continued, investments in infrastructure and innovations have not been made by many farmers. Difficult to predict weather fluctuations, unpredictable global market conditions, sudden and dramatic natural shocks such as plant and animal diseases and pests have made agricultural endeavor a risky business model for the private sector. Faltering, declining, and inappropriate investments have been a central feature of the sector. Fortunately, with available resources from the oil and gas sector, we have been able in the past to meet our demand for food through imports with a value of over $4 billion per year. But we can no longer tolerate such a high food import bill. Madam Speaker, declining oil and gas revenues and the COVID-19 pandemic experience have made food security a national objective. And to that end, we are committed to insulating the economy against the impact of shortages and supply chain disruptions. For the next 5 years, we are placing expansion of our domestic food supply at the top of our national policy agenda. We have already decided to make agriculture in all its facets a tax-free industry, and we are going to build on this base.
Order 53-1E, please, so that the Minister of Finance could be allowed to speak in silence.
Okay, so just a little warning to all members. When the debate begins, everybody will have their opportunity to speak. I would like to hear the Minister of Finance.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I was soldering on despite the noise from the other side, and I will continue to do so. So let me repeat. We have already decided to make agriculture in all its facets a tax-free industry, and we are going to build on this base. We will provide the confidence which is required for our investors and farmers to invest their time, energy, and their own personal finance in the development of the sector by making the sector much more attractive, especially for young people. A $500 million agriculture stimulus package is thus being established and funded in 2021, which I must point out is in addition to the normal budgetary allocation to the agriculture sector. In fact, this represents a 70% increase over last year's allocation for agriculture. The funding will support the rapid expansion in production and marketing of selected high-demand commodities with short production cycles, such as vegetables, legumes, roots and tubers, grains, fruits and small livestock. Adequate quality seeds will be secured, the use of alternative feedstock will be encouraged, and land issues will be addressed with a view to accelerating land tenure and access to idle state lands. The linkages along the food value and distribution chains will be strengthened by making locally produced foods more attractive within the country. This will be accomplished by firstly providing training and technical support to ensure that producers maintain international quality standards. Secondly, emphasizing the link between local and agricultural production and the health of the population. Thirdly, guaranteeing state agricultural purchasing and distribution. Let me repeat that. Guaranteeing state agricultural purchasing and distribution of local content to supplement state-funded initiatives such as the school feeding program, public hospitals, and the protective services. Fourthly, increasing the use of digital technology to foster agricultural marketing and distribution by increasing public education campaigns. And finally, influencing the food service industry to provide meals which cater to local tastes. Madam Speaker, we are building a more technologically advanced agricultural system to increase the availability of domestic food supply. A center of excellence in agriculture and biotechnology is being established using existing human resources and infrastructure at the Ministry of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries, the University of Trinidad and Tobago, Kariri, and other agencies of the state. Moreover, education and training on sustainable agricultural practices is being accelerated. The use of water-saving devices is being encouraged. Stronger buyer-supplier relationships are being promoted, and accessing the stockpiling needs of essential commodities to cater for emergencies is being fostered. These public initiatives will set the country on track to increase our food production and significantly reduce our net food import bill. The new vision for agriculture is being further consolidated on a wide range of other public initiatives, including investing in precision agriculture, which allows farmers to maximize yields by controlling every variable of crop farming, promoting the use of home gardens, incorporating indoor vertical farming methods to increase crop yields, creating community-supported agriculture programs, increasing education campaigns promoting the benefits of locally produced alternatives to cater to healthy lifestyles, and developing marine aquaculture. The government will invest in productivity-oriented research and technology and strengthen the linkages between industry and agriculture to build sustainable food systems by targeting the production of products which can derive higher value-added benefits through the manufacturing sector, such as agro-processing, nutraceuticals, cosmetics, pharmaceuticals, textiles, paper, packaging, adhesive industries, among others. Utilizing final products from farming and fishing to expand the experience in the tourism industry. Developing industries which produce bioethanol, biodiesel, and biogas from organic waste. Deepening integration within the private sector by connecting micro and big businesses to create a strong agribusiness ecosystem. Creating more public-private partnership arrangements for agribusiness and investing in livestock farming technology. We expect, Madam Speaker, that the share of agriculture in GDP will be consistently increased as we make agricultural activity much more attractive for farmers and investors. We will achieve our objective to move food security out of the existing danger zone and allow it to take its rightful place as a major activity in our new economy. The Minister of Agriculture, Land and Fisheries will expand on these and other initiatives during his contribution to the debate. Manufacturing. Madam Speaker, as we chart a new and innovation-driven future post-COVID-19, the manufacturing sector will become the digital catalyst for achieving economic transformation and diversification, consolidating in the process a focus on new and niche markets, especially for exports. This sector will remain private sector driven, but the government will continue facilitating an enabling environment for the flourishing of the sector. Advanced technologies and environmentally friendly practices will anchor the sector in the digital landscape over the next 2 years, putting it on a sustainable path of competitiveness and growth. We will support the manufacturing sector in its quest to double output by 2024, expand employment, and exceed its current contribution of approximately 19% to GDP. The deficiencies and structural rigidities which exist within the sector will be addressed. We will build on the prevailing collaborative environment involving the Trinidad and Tobago Manufacturers Association, the Energy Chamber, and the Chamber of Commerce. Our vision in the post-pandemic era is the continuing evolution of the sector to one which is globally competitive, productive, and innovative. Among other initiatives, the Foundation for Further Development and Expansion of the manufacturing sector over the medium term will coalesce around several major transformation initiatives, including the ease of doing business will continue to improve as we build on the existing framework of competitive indicators. The single electronic window is already improving performance in the processing of imports and exports. An electronic funds transfer window is being put in place to allow all payments to government, such as taxes and customs duty, to be made by electronic means. E-government is ensuring that all government services, where practicable, are automated. The voluntary compliance program under the Customs and Excise Division is allowing shipments of bona fide importers to be fast-tracked, and the National Trade Facilitation Committee is modernizing, upgrading, and automating import procedures to reduce the time and costs associated with the import and export of goods. The VAT refund system will be made more efficient with the aim of improving cash flow for businesses, thereby significantly easing their financial and economic burden, especially during the tough financial times ahead. The highly successful tradable VAT bond instrument will be utilized again, where appropriate, to settle arrears. And the Exim Bank is being transformed to facilitate the growth and expansion of the non-energy export sector, thereby enhancing our foreign exchange earnings and sustaining employment levels. In addition to these investment facilitatory mechanisms, the government will improve production capacity through the implementation of a national quality policy by accrediting public and private laboratories and by modernizing the regulatory framework for our exports. Madam Speaker, the Evolving Technologies and Enterprise Development Company, ETEC, will become a facilitator of commercial development. Firms in high-value manufacturing areas will be targeted, in particular those exporting niche products, including our chocolate, our native Moruga scorpion pepper, and the Moruga hill rice, to name a few. We intend to improve the current free zone regime into a new and modern special economic zones framework, building on our experience with free zone arrangements. Under this new regime, our economic free zone regime will be modernized. The economic and social impact of these zones will be increased. The international appeal of our economic zone regime will be enhanced, and existing and advanced new mechanisms will be improved and procedures put in place to develop and manage economic zones in an effective manner. The establishment of the new National Special Economic Zone regime will attract new dynamic and sustained investments which the previous free zone arrangements could not achieve. The aluminium industry will be revisited, and we will foster downstream aluminium production and other high-value manufacturing such as electronic assembly, steel pan, textile and garment manufacturing for the domestic fashion industry, cosmetic and petrochemical production, and pharmaceutical and nutraceuticals, including medical marijuana. The scrap iron industry will also be promoted as an eco-friendly business by providing the necessary technical support and regulatory and incentive framework. I turn now to construction. Madam Speaker, construction activity for creating infrastructure will be strengthened as a driver of strategic economic growth, serving as a catalyst for promoting development in all areas of the public agenda, through delivering quality health care through improved health facilities, including new and refurbished hospitals, facilitating safety in road transport through the rollout of a network of roads and highways, as well as bridges and walkovers, all built to internationally accepted standards, improving the supply of water and addressing wastewater issues, building educational capacity through a mix of school systems, and expanding our housing stock at affordable prices. From a policy perspective, growth in this sector will be anchored in the context of the transformation of the legislative, regulatory, and operating construction ecosystem. The focus will be on more user-friendly and efficient regulation, value for money through improved procurement, improved land use, a modern built environment, and increased local content in the sector. Our construction program will be anchored on several key pillars, including smart growth will be scored and rewarded by assessing and rating incoming applications for development, as well as by other government agencies and the private sector. The utilization of a smart growth scorecard made up of key performance indicators would measure the adherence of development projects to the desired planning and design principles and ensure that the country transits from the status quo of purely shovel-ready projects or preparatory projects towards shovel-worthy or ready-to-build projects. Smart plans and land use regulations will be enhanced by overhauling the land use policy and regulations and standards now used by the Town and Country Planning Division to ensure compatibility with the aims of the new framework. The adoption of the National Spatial Development Strategy and municipal local area plans will be an immediate requirement. Smart transportation and strategies and systems will be developed by ensuring that proper service levels are met for both urban and rural residents, by providing a variety of viable and appealing transportation options and by managing optimal parking, especially in highly urbanized areas. Madam Speaker, we have established a menu of infrastructural projects which can be supplemented by a pipeline of projects, including public-private partnerships, procurement projects, and private sector projects. These projects will become key catalysts and financial drivers for stimulating the economy for the next 2 years. The projects include completion of the Solomon Ho-Choi Highway extension to Point Fortin, construction of the Churchill-Roosevelt Highway extension to Manzanilla, construction of the Valencia to Toco Highway and the fast ferry port in Toco, continued implementation of flood mitigation, coastal zone protection, implementation of the San Fernando Waterfront Redevelopment Program, implementation of the Port of Spain Redevelopment Program, redevelopment of Skinner Park, and implementation of the Urban Renewal and Revitalization Program. We are expediting progress on improving the ease of doing business by reducing the time for obtaining approvals from the statutory agencies to build or develop property. We are moving the permitting ecosystem, that is the ecosystem for obtaining building permits, to a paperless environment. This is a critical pillar in the new e-construction system. Madam Speaker, over the next 2 years, we will incentivize the construction sector through a number of fiscal incentives, including tax relief, which will be granted for approved development projects, such as approved housing and commercial and industrial building development, along similar lines to the fiscal incentives already available under the law for approved tourism and hotel projects. I now move to creative and cultural industries. Madam Speaker, the creative and cultural industries are emerging as a critical engine of growth and development. However, the COVID-19 pandemic impact on these industries has been unquestionable. This sector will be among the last to reopen fully. Industry players are undergoing serious hardship, in particular in the fields of music, film, dance and theater, heritage, literature publishing, festivals and broadcasting. To cushion the fallout, artists have received and are eligible to receive short-term income relief of $5,000 as part of our COVID-19 relief program in recognition of their continued inactivity. I will say now that the salary relief grant and income support grant programs will also be extended to December 2020 for workers in this industry, creative and cultural industry, among others in a similar situation, to provide further financial support where applicable. The economic and employment creating potential of the creative and cultural industries will be unlocked in a measured and consistent manner through providing support to artists, promoting support for intellectual property protection, establishing a local content guideline for local media houses, supporting the transition of creative arts from the informal sector to the formal sector, providing local and foreign training opportunities, including partnering with tertiary training institutions, collecting and publishing local cultural statistics, encouraging the use of artists' guilds to promote equity, decent work standards and quality work management, marketing Trinidad and Tobago as an arena for international film productions, and continuing to expand the local fashion industry. In keeping with our commitment to a digital economy, in 2022, or by 2022, initiatives geared towards improving digital literacy for local artists will be promoted. Incentives will also be provided for increasing the percentage of local music played on local music stations. I turn now to social development. Madam Speaker, our new development model will be much more human-centered. We have long ensured that our expanding economy accommodates the most vulnerable and underprivileged in our community: pensioners, the elderly, the unemployed, the vulnerable, including persons with disabilities. A multifaceted social safety net allows these citizens to deal with extraordinary burdens, especially in times of crises. A wide-ranging social safety net has been pivotal in the social protection regime. In 2020, 200,000 persons would have benefited from a range of new and enhanced social services. The COVID-19 response expanded the social safety net by providing, among other things, income support, food cards, and rent relief for persons who had lost their jobs. In addition to the current social agenda, new programs to target specific groups such as single mothers and fathers, children and vulnerable youth will be introduced. To that end, an integrated community first responders system will be put in place, and a data management system will be implemented to quickly identify those households, women and children, and single parents who require support, and in particular, female-headed and single-father households, elderly women, vulnerable persons living alone, mental health persons, and shelters for displaced men and women. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding the success from the proliferation of policies and programs within at-risk communities, in particular those which impacted the communities, we are of the view that increased focus must be placed on the holistic development of these communities to reduce the number of youth who face exceptional challenges in the traditional venues of socialization, principally the family, the community, the school, and the workplace. We are tackling vigorously the challenges of youth in urban and semi-urban communities with high crime rates. A community recovery committee, established by the Prime Minister just before the election, is now working towards the design of an action plan for communities with a proliferation of at-risk youth, beginning with Greater Laventille and East Port of Spain, and continuing on to other communities in which crime, economic deprivation, and victimization are endemic due to societal and other issues. In focusing on the workforce, we will facilitate trading, support schools and daycare facilities, and fund domestic violence centers, transitional facilities, and strategies to end gender-based violence. Madam Speaker, with dwindling revenues, we are still ensuring that social expenditure is efficient and that more can be done with less. A national social services card system using a unique e-identifier will track vulnerable persons and families, modernize the delivery of social support programs, encourage the use of locally produced goods, and develop a register of agencies and individuals supportive of the vulnerable population. I turn now to human capital, or education as it is also called. Our society is already transitioning to an innovative and digital economy. There exists within our national community digital and mobile devices at high levels of penetration. There exists within our national community digital and mobile devices at high levels of penetration, including smartphones at 80% penetration and internet access at 80% penetration. We are increasingly using e-government and e-payment services, but their full application is not geared towards producing the skills and the competencies for the workforce in the new digital economy. In recognition of the importance of information and communication technologies, we have embarked on a systematic upgrade and enhancement of all the ICT systems in the education sector. Our objective is to support and improve the delivery of services to our internal and external clients. Immediately upon our assumption of office in 2015, we established an ICT in Education 5-star plan. We are aware that digital technologies are already infused in the education system, but the participants in the process did not all make use of the available digital resources, and this was due to a variety of circumstances, including insufficient provision of necessary equipment, lack of training of teachers in the field of information and technology, limited access to the internet in the learning process, and ineffective mechanisms for transmitting information. We are currently addressing these deficiencies. Madam Speaker, we are improving governance of all ICT initiatives. We have established an overarching ICT policy. We have expanded infrastructure to support ICT in schools, inclusive of the provision of laptops and other technology devices, and we are restructuring the curriculum for effective ICT integration, as well as training teachers. We have taken steps through our Adopt a School initiative to deliver laptops and internet connectivity to our student population. At the virtual opening of our schools in September 2020, however, we recognize that thousands of children did not have easy access to computers or the internet to be able to take advantage of the new system of virtual teaching. We are facilitating the process by the removal of all taxes on computers, laptops, and tablets, which took place on September 5, 2020, in time for the reopening of all schools and educational institutions. We also note that the private sector and public-spirited individuals are coming forward to assist in the provision of these devices. To add to this effort, we have provided the sum of $50 million in this year's budgetary allocation for the acquisition of computers for needy students. The acquisition and distribution of these computers will be a joint effort between the Ministries of Education to identify the students, the Ministry of Public Administration and Digital Transformation to make sure we get value for money and proper specifications of equipment, and the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services to ensure that those who really need these computers get them. And I repeat, to ensure value for money, fitness for purpose, and distribution to those who really need them. We are ensuring that our teachers are adequately equipped with the knowledge, attributes, and skills required to perform their tasks in the new ICT educational environment. The ICT Teacher Professional Development Program is nurturing learning communities among both teachers and students and would lead to a more effective and productive use of technology. Over 2,300 teachers so far have graduated successfully from this program. We are ensuring that early childhood, primary, and secondary school physical infrastructure is modernized and adequately maintained to fulfill the needs of students, teachers, non-teaching support staff, and administrators. The UE South Campus in Penal Debe, when fully commissioned, is expected to expand the reach of university education. The UTT Tamina campus, upon completion, and the upgrading of UTT campuses across Trinidad and Tobago, will provide state-of-the-art facilities for creating a new cadre of employees for the digital workplace. Madam Speaker, notwithstanding many challenges, and may I congratulate my colleague, the Minister of Education here, the Ministry of Education has safely reopened our educational system through the use of digital technology and best practice as we move from face-to-face classes to online instruction. We are also building on the literacy and numeracy curriculum by making education much more relevant to the workplace of the new digital economy. Our students with new productive enhancing skills and competencies are preparing themselves for work in the 21st century. We will ensure that no student will be left behind. Turn now to housing. Madam Speaker, the provision of good quality and low-cost housing for our low-income citizens has long been a fundamental pillar in our public housing policy agenda. Since its creation, the Housing Development Corporation has delivered over 50,000 housing units. Yet, the number of applicants has remained substantial, over 175,000 in the lower to middle income segments of the market. The HDC, with its current structure and financing, is rolling out approximately 3,000 units per annum. We will be expanding this output through the private sector, in particular small and medium-sized contractors, which have been accorded crucial roles in the rollout of public housing. Sound and supporting infrastructure base is a critical pillar for anchoring sustainable growth and development. Over the next 10 years, Madam Speaker, we will deliver 25,000 new homes on state lands through our accelerated construction program. We will cater to individuals with different levels of incomes and socio-economic standings. The mix of housing solutions being provided by the Housing Development Corporation will include, but will not be limited to, 10,000 starter homes valued at $250,000 each, with a monthly payment of $925 and zero down payment. 5,000 affordable homes at $350,000 to $500,000 each, with a monthly payment of $1,165 to $1,755, with a 5% down payment. 5,000 middle-income homes valued between $650,000 and $900,000, with a monthly payment of $2,285 to $3,160 and a 5% down payment. And 5,000 housing units targeting young professionals, with the units valued between $1 million and $1.5 million, and a monthly payment of $3,510 to $5,265 and a 5% down payment. We will resource the Land Settlement Agency to construct homes costing less than $250,000 using the experiences from the Housing and Village Improvement Program, where, Madam Speaker, if I digress, they are building houses for less than $200,000, good houses. We will encourage the private sector to mirror our efforts by delivering a further 10,000 units over the next 10 years. Madam Speaker, the Small and Medium Contractors Initiative, already in progress, will roll out 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom houses at a cost less than $500,000, already being done. In addition, 20% of all state housing construction projects would be reserved for small and medium contractors. Let me say that again. 20% of all state housing construction projects would be reserved for small and medium contractors. In our housing thrust, we are specifically targeting families with earnings less than $10,000 per month in several communities in Trinidad and Tobago, among others. We will be expanding and strengthening the range of facilities for increasing the housing stock, now in execution, through providing housing improvement and repair grants of up to $35,000, as well as relaxing the access policies for these grants, providing concessional home construction loans with a 2-year moratorium on payments, providing concessional land purchase loans with a 2-year moratorium on payments, and establishing housing start grants of up to $35,000. Most importantly, we will be encouraging the thousands of HCC clients currently occupying HCC units without finalizing the purchase of same to convert license to occupy agreements into full mortgage arrangements. Very important, Madam Speaker. This construction activity from a wide range of firms and individuals will generate at least 20,000 jobs per year. We'll make it easier for the private sector to access tax incentives for private building and housing development. Develop TT will be tasked to reduce the time for the entire building approval process to 6 months or less. And the relevant government agencies will be mandated to reduce the time for obtaining approval for land, for housing and construction tax incentives to 3 months or less. Over the next 2 years, the government will provide the enabling environment and necessary subsidy for all state-supported housing mortgage loans to be a subsidized interest loan of 2% over 30 years, and with a down payment of just 5% in the higher income brackets. First-time homeowners with existing mortgages will be able to refinance their mortgage loans at concessional rates under prescribed conditions. Fully developed land for housing will be provided from $10 per square foot for a typical housing lot. To finance all of this, the Ministry of Finance will facilitate a government-guaranteed loan facility of $1 billion for the HCC in 2021, after which we expect the HCC to accelerate the finalization of mortgages for already completed houses to assist in financing new construction. Appropriate loan financing for village improvement and low-cost housing development will also be made available to the Land Settlement Agency, which will require amendments to the State Land Regularization of Tenure Act. I move now to health. Madam Speaker, the delivery of quality health care to our citizens, in particular our senior citizens, has been a major public sector objective in our health policy agenda. The impact on the health of our citizenry has been unquestionably beneficial. Sustainable Development Goals status prevail in maternal and child health and in neonatal mortality, where we have witnessed continual declines. Life expectancy has been increasing. The Chronic Disease Assistance Program, CDAP, is providing through an existing network of pharmacies over 1,200 medical items to meet the demands of almost 200,000 100,000 citizens, in particular our senior citizens. Cataract surgeries have been climbing, as have been cancer screenings. Our primary healthcare interventions and special health programs are improving the health and well-being of our citizens. The Children's Life Fund has catered for 189 cases, including 149 cardiac cases and 4 hepatic cases. The renal dialysis program is currently providing treatment to over 1,200 patients, and the adult cardiac program to over 800 patients. Madam Speaker, we will soon be providing state-of-the-art healthcare services through a network of modern facilities, including at the Arima and Point Fortin hospitals, now fully commissioned, Sangre Grande Hospital, the Couva Hospital and multi-training facility, the Port of Spain Central Hospital block, the Linear Accelerator LINAC facility at the St. James Medical Complex, and the Diego Martin Health Center. Our health infrastructure has been meeting the demands of a growing society and remains consistent with global advances. This sector was able to facilitate in the shortest possible time frame the rollout of a parallel healthcare system for the treatment and care of COVID-19 patients, and did not interrupt the delivery of normal state-of-the-art healthcare services to our citizens. With adequate quarantine and step-down facilities, we have been able to accommodate the high incidence of infections in the second wave of COVID-19, which commenced in late July 2020. I turn now to public utilities. Madam Speaker, we are enhancing public management of our essential public utility systems. We're ensuring that our households, communities, and businesses are adequately, cost-effectively, and efficiently served. And in particular, those of our citizens in unserved and underserved areas. A consistent and reliable electricity service, an adequate water supply, and efficient sewage treatment are key enablers of comfortable living and lifestyles. We have put at the top of our agenda the delivery of a sustainable water supply to our citizens. Combating the COVID-19 virus requires proper sanitation and health practices, and our citizens deserve no less. In respect of water supply and sanitation, the Water and Sewage Authority is central to achieving the objectives of government. A cabinet subcommittee is now focusing its attention on the issues which are impeding WASA from meeting our needs. The subcommittee will review the operations of WASA, including its unsustainable debt position, its aging pipelines, its governance structure, and inadequate water distribution. We envisage a report by November 30, 2020, which would include recommendations with respect to the levels of investment adequate to the needs of an efficient water supply, and we will take such decisions, including a tariff review, which are necessary for WASA to raise the water supply to our communities to adequate service levels. In parallel, the treatment of sewage will be modernized. We also consider the generation of electricity to the nation as more or less satisfactory, although with a substantial subsidy base. We have been bringing into the electricity grid unserved and underserved communities, taking electricity to 99% of the country, with 494,022 customers. This has been a tremendous achievement. The average reliability of the supply after an unscheduled interruption is improving with increased amounts of investments. We are pursuing a wide range of programs and projects to ensure that electricity supply remains reliable and security enhanced. Our communities and roadways continue to be well lit. Street lights are being installed on roadways, parks, and recreational grounds. The electricity transmission and distribution system is being strengthened with particular emphasis on underserved communities. Upgrade works are being completed on substations and other infrastructure. We consider that the upcoming tariff review should result in increasing levels of tariffs for electricity supply as being essential for enhancing investment and for ensuring a reliable distribution and transmission system. I turn now to safety and security. Madam Speaker, the government remains committed to the fight against crime and criminality. The approach has been to ensure a multi-agency approach to this fight. The national security landscape has been significantly strengthened in the past year, and positive results are beginning to show. The government has implemented several measures and initiatives that are bearing fruit and leading to a safer and more secure Trinidad and Tobago. A few of these were the operationalization of the National Operations Fusion Center and the establishment of a National Intelligence Fusion Center, leading to a sharing of resources, intelligence, and more focused intelligence-driven operations. Facilitating closer working relationships among the arms and divisions of national security that has led to better results due to sharing of intelligence and resources. The use of greater technology in national security, especially within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. Use of GPS tracking and real-time cameras on emergency response patrol vehicles, more efficient CCTV command centers in the TTPS, use of body cameras, use of drones, more involvement in the E999 system. The provision of more resources to the Financial Investigations Branch to tackle money laundering and white-collar crime investigations. Opening of new state-of-the-art police stations in Besson Street, St. Joseph, Chauvin Road, Tobago, and Roxborough, Tobago. Ongoing construction of state-of-the-art police stations in Carenage and St. Clair. Improvement of border security via upgrades of coastal radar systems, refurbishment of the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard interceptors, and use of multi-agency specialist teams to provide on-land border coastline operations. The acquisition of 2 Cape-class naval vessels for longer offshore patrol operations with expected delivery in 2021. Improve security systems in prisons, the upgrade of alarms and CCTV systems. The refurbishment of the remand prison. Opening of brand new fire stations in Penal and Roxborough, Tobago. Refurbishing of other fire stations in Trinidad and Tobago. Madam Speaker, we are also setting up a specialized multi-agency border port interdiction unit to tackle the illegal importation of narcotics, illegal firearms, and other contraband items via legal ports in Trinidad and Tobago. We will also provide more resources directed at the fight against white-collar corruption. This will be facilitated by the hiring of more expert forensic investigators, auditors, lawyers, and others to pursue white-collar corruption. In addition, we will improve the prison facilities and introduce new programs to improve literacy, training, education of incarcerated individuals. Provide more equipment and fire tenders in the fire service. Upgrade the immigration department systems to allow more use of available technology, thereby improving travel experiences and security via use of biometrics and other available technology. We are completing ongoing projects, and we are embarking on others which have already been designed, including the construction of a new police headquarters to allow for better operational planning and management of daily policing activities, the expansion of the Riverine and Coastal Patrol Unit to provide greater deployment at sea, to get better coverage on the coastline, to patrol the reefs and secluded beaches in Tobago, as well as swamps and rivers in Trinidad. We are at an advanced stage of consolidating our strategic operations with the soon-to-be commissioned divisional command centers, which will allow the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service to improve monitoring and coordination of events, exercises, and patrols, to improve accountability of every patrol and action taken by officers, reduce response times, and collaborate in real time with the mobile command centers and emergency response patrol unit, which are now being upgraded. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is also currently establishing divisional offices for the Special Victims Department, which comprises the Child Protection Unit, the recently formed Gender-Based Violence Unit, and the Sexual Offences Unit. These are being refurbished and will provide office accommodation, interview and observation rooms, and special purpose rooms, including property rooms, which will house special swab kits for victims, seal kits, exhibit refrigerators, exhibits from ongoing cases and equipment, as well as victim recovery rooms for the unavoidable wait periods during the initial stages of the investigation. We are also establishing virtual courts, which will eliminate the traditional court system and adjudicate cases online via video links to police custody suites, magistrates' court, and lawyer offices. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service Medical Facility will provide medical services to the officers of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service on a 24-hour basis, while refurbished housing facilities will facilitate an additional intake of recruits on an annual basis with the view to bringing the police service up to full strength within 4 years. The Minister of National Security will provide further details in his presentation, in particular with respect to the plans and programs of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the acquisition of modern equipment for the police in 2021. I turn now to energy. Madam Speaker, our energy sector is now in major transition. The challenges posed by the global energy industry and the associated oversupply situation, as well as our own declining rates of production in the gas and oil sectors, require us to develop our remaining oil and gas resources in a cost-efficient manner. In fact, we are seeing demand destruction also arriving from the COVID-19 shutdowns on a scale not seen before. Investment decisions by major upstream players are being revisited, and several petrochemical plants are being idled in the context of shortages of gas supply and constraining international demand and price conditions. Madam Speaker, immediately upon our assumption of office in 2015, and after an assessment of the viability of the gas and oil sectors, we began an energy reform process. A major component of the restructuring process was our decision to address the difficulties inherent in the domestic sector. We restructured the Petroleum Company of Trinidad and Tobago, Petrotrin, a loss-making state enterprise with operational expenditure outstripping its revenues and with unsustainable debt obligations. We focus on exploration and production by creating a dedicated company into which we transferred and vested the exploration and production assets of Petrotrin. Heritage Petroleum Company Limited. We established a terminaling business by creating Paria Fuel Trading Company Limited, which became responsible for importing and distributing all categories of fuel required for our domestic and sub-regional markets. We also established a refining company into which we placed the refinery assets, Guaracara Refining Company Limited. These three companies became subsidiaries of the holding company, Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Company Limited, and we retained the legacy assets, including non-core, under the control of Petrotrin. In order to ensure its continued success and survival under the current global conditions, Heritage took immediate and decisive action to ramp up its exploration and production activities, including optimizing its project portfolio with a focus on projects with a quick payback. With a viable business model being appropriately managed and executed, Heritage raised its average production rate to 34,900 barrels per day during the period October 2019 to September 2020, up from 32,971 barrels per day during the preceding period October 2018 to September 2019. These subsidiaries are totally self-financing, a far cry from the old Petrotrin. By the end of its first year in operation, that is 2019, Heritage had become a profitable enterprise, posting a $1.4 billion profit and contributing $820 million in taxes, levies, rents, royalties, and licenses. This profitability has continued into the first 6 months of the financial year 2020, with the company having sufficient cash to meet its operating expenditure as well as its statutory and tax payments. With Heritage Petroleum focusing on ramping up oil production in a cost-effective manner, the government is currently engaged in protracted discussions and negotiations with Patriotic Technologies with a view to satisfactorily concluding the conclusion of a sale and purchase agreement for the Pointe-à-Pierre refinery in the interest of all concerned, in particular the public interest. However, the government's deadline for the completion of this exercise is October 31st, 2020. And if agreement cannot be reached on a viable or practical contractual agreement by that time, after giving Patriotic all possible opportunities to finalize the terms of the agreement, the process will be brought to an end, and the government will consider other options for the sale of the refinery. In parallel with our focus on the domestic sector, we tackled on the external front two serious problems in the oil and gas sector: declining gas production and the absence of long-term gas supply contracts. There were two subsidiary issues: gas pricing for medium to long-term viability for both upstream and downstream industries, as well as a greater share for our citizens of the income earned in the extraction of natural gas, our natural gas. Indeed, following the historic and unique spotlight on energy, the country's energy business and challenges have been aggressively and transparently addressed by the government. Madam Speaker, at this stage, I wish to commend again the astute leadership of our Prime Minister, Dr. the Honorable Keith Rowley, whose skillful and purposeful dialogue with international oil majors has resulted in mutually acceptable solutions for these issues. It is in this scenario that after years of circular discussion of the issues, we are now able to report that planning and execution of production from the Manatee field, separate and apart from the Loran field, as decoupled elements of the cross-border Loran-Manatee field, are actively underway. The two parts have been decoupled. We now have in place a gas pricing regime which establishes long-term viability for upstreamers and downstreamers, and importantly, gas production has been stabilized, and we have in place an agreed share for our citizens of 12.5% as a royalty rate on the income earned in the extraction of our natural gas. Despite the intense competition for capital worldwide, upstreamers have kept faith with our country. Foreign direct investments of just over US $2.2 billion are being projected for the upstream sector during calendar 2020, and an additional amount of US $2 billion during 2021. Madam Speaker, on September the 9th, 2020, and because of continuing negotiations of gas-related issues, BPTT received a 10-year extension on 92 of its exploration and production licenses in the Columbus Basin. As a result, the state will reap a financial benefit of US $250 million over the 4-year period 2021 to 2024 from this initiative. These discussions have been taking place for some time. We completed phase 1 of the discussions in December 2018. BPTT received a 10-year extension of its Southeast Galeota license, as well as 91 Teak, Saman, Pui, and East Mayaro licenses. In return, the state received a sum of $1 billion for settlement of legacy issues. These renewals of exploration and production licenses, as well as cash payments to government, have been mutually beneficial and have placed the energy sector on a more solid and sustainable footing. Further, significant investments are also being made further down the energy value chain and on major renewable energy and energy efficiency initiatives. We will continue, Madam Speaker, to be an attractive location for investment in the oil sector for years to come. The latest crude oil audit prepared by Netherlands, Seawell and Associates for the year ended 2018 indicated proved crude oil reserves at 220.1 million barrels, 10.3% more than the 199.5 million barrels in 2012. Probable reserves rose to 99.7 million barrels, 16.6% higher than the 85.5 million barrels in 2012. We are witnessing the result of onshore undeveloped opportunities. I am advised by the Minister of Energy that when production from the oil majors is added to that of Heritage Petroleum, the monthly rate of crude oil and condensate production has been rising steadily and is estimated to reach approximately 60,000 barrels per day in 2020, rising to 80,000 barrels per day in 2022. Looking forward, BHP has announced a 3.5 trillion cubic feet of gas find in its deepwater fields, and I am advised that BHP could begin producing up to 1.5 billion cubic feet of natural gas per day by 2026. As a measure of confidence, BHP has strengthened its drilling program with the commencement of the deepwater Broadside exploration well, the deepest well ever drilled in the country. Furthermore, the expansion of the exploration program of BHP could receive final investment decisions between 2022 and 2024, consolidating the company as an important partner in our energy sector. Madam Speaker, our natural gas reserves have remained relatively stable, according to the 2018 Ryder Scott Natural Gas Reserves Audit. With lower demand from the petrochemical and gas refining sector, I am advised by the Minister of Energy that natural gas output is expected to average 3.2 billion standard cubic feet per day in fiscal 2020 and to remain at more or less this level in 2021. However, I am also advised that the capacity exists to produce as much as 3.5 billion standard cubic feet, thereby providing the conditions for the restarting of those petrochemical plants once commodity prices improve. We are keenly focused on improving the investment climate in the energy sector through a review of the Petroleum Taxes Act with a view to simplifying the existing oil and gas fiscal regime and making it more competitive to investors. We are also reviewing the application of supplemental petroleum tax, particularly for small producers and mature fields with a view to encouraging investment and job creation. As a result of discussions, the threshold for the importation of the supplementary petroleum tax for small onshore oil producers will be increased to $75 per barrel for fiscal years 2021 and 2022 in the first instance, up from the current $50, and will be reviewed for continuation at this threshold level at the end of this 2-year period. Based on discussions with the Energy Chamber, we are defining at this time a small onshore oil producer as a producer producing up to 2,000 barrels per day, and that will be subject to review after further discussion with the sector. A similar provision will also be made for small offshore producers. In addition, we will negotiate with the major oil and gas companies an even greater share of energy revenues and complete the assessment of the gas value chain to ensure its viability in the short and medium term. All major upstream players will be encouraged to share infrastructure and services. We will avoid becoming a marginal producer of ammonia, methanol, and urea by strengthening our cost competitiveness in downstream petrochemical production. In this regard, we welcome the first shipment of 13,000 metric tons of methanol by the Caribbean Gas Chemical Limited in September 2020. This company, partly owned by the National Gas Company, is likely to increase our export of methanol, which has been hard hit by the closure of plants at the Point Lisas Industrial Estate. Our strategy will involve exploring active opportunities in the regional energy market, including small-scale energy, and seeking opportunities for access to and sharing of common gas transportation and processing infrastructure which might be underutilized. We have been building on energy services sector, the energy services sector, as a key source of diversification and sustainable growth. We have estimated that this sector has been employing approximately 40,000 individuals in 720 firms. And although our resources are being depleted, we will develop Trinidad and Tobago as a regional hub for energy services, in particular in view of the emerging and ready markets in Guyana and Suriname. The Exim Bank will be restructured to provide project financing for Caribbean energy sector projects by Trinidad and Tobago companies. Energy services as a key enabler in diversification will be driven by a public-private partnership vehicle with tax incentives to support and improve the exports of energy services. We are also implementing, Madam Speaker, renewable energy electric power in accordance with our commitments under the Paris Accord. We have secured through a competitive procurement process 2 bidders who will deliver 112 megawatts of power to the electric grid. Upon completion, the project will be the largest solar project in the Caribbean, and the tariff now being negotiated will be extremely competitive relative to existing tariffs. In addition, we'll pursue development opportunities by introducing green petrochemicals through the substitution of hydrogen from the natural gas reform process, and also utilize steam, which is currently wasted from an existing power station, to run a new turbine to produce electricity. The Minister of Energy and Energy Industries will say more about all of these projects, plans, and programs during his contribution to the budget debate. I now turn to Tobago. The budgetary proposals of the Tobago House of Assembly were submitted to the Ministry of Finance, consistent with the provisions of Act 40 of 1996. Tobago has special challenges, and we continue to work with the Tobago House of Assembly to mitigate the decline in economic activity in Tobago and to restore its economy to a trajectory for continued growth and resilience. Madam Speaker, the tourism development Tobago economy has been particularly hard hit by the COVID-19 pandemic. Over the last several months, this administration has been working in concert with the Tobago House of Assembly on a series of broad-based measures to bring relief to the people and the business community of Tobago, including the Tourism Accommodation Relief Grant, Business Relief Grant, Business Relief Loan, Relief Grant to Tourism Industry Ancillary Services, a 4-year soft loan facility with a 2-year moratorium through First Citizens and Republic Bank for micro, small, and medium businesses, and the liquidity support loan program for the credit union movement. In the next fiscal year, building on many initiatives which are already in place, we will continue to work assiduously with the Tobago House of Assembly to institute an enhanced suite of economic and social measures to reduce the impact of the pandemic as we provide additional relief for all Tobagonians and citizens resident in Tobago. The allocations to the Tobago House of Assembly place increased focus on enhancing their tourism product, the greater use of digital technologies and social media in marketing, attracting new investment in the tourism sector, enhancing service delivery, and on financial support to facilitate upgrades to properties in the tourism sector and to boost their online presence. The construction of the new A&R Robinson International Airport Terminal is scheduled to commence in January 2021. Additionally, the Inter-Island Sea Bridge will benefit from expanded capacity with the arrival of the 2 new fast ferries, the Bago Reef and the APT James, in the near future. Indeed, Madam Speaker, to demonstrate our commitment to Tobago, I am pleased to announce that we are scheduled to take possession of the APT James, a brand new, purpose-built, state-of-the-art, modern fast ferry constructed by Austal in Australia before the end of this month. If all goes according to plan, the new ferry is expected to arrive and go into service on the Sea Bridge by the end of December 2020. This magnificent new ferry will have the capacity to transport 926 passengers and 250 cars in comfort at a service speed of 37.5 knots. And if I digress, those of us who travel to Bago by ferry, you will know at that speed it will reach Tobago in less than 3 hours. Its sister ship, the Bago Reef, another modern fast ferry, now under construction by Incat in Australia, will put the icing on the cake when it arrives here shortly after the APT James and will transform the vacation experience in Tobago and inter-island transport. Special incentives will be provided to stimulate innovation among small and medium enterprises and to facilitate increased entrepreneurial activity on the island, especially among our young adults. To enhance the food security in Tobago, the allocations to the Assembly in the next fiscal year provide for special incentives for their farmers, the development of the agro-processing sector through the formation of the Tobago Agribusiness Development Company, the expansion of the Agricultural Access Road Program, and the provision of financial assistance to small and medium enterprises in the agricultural sector, and the infusion of technology, modern farming techniques, and research in agriculture. Allocations to the Assembly in this year's budget will support accelerated housing development in Tobago through the development of new housing estates, as well as provisions for upgrades to the existing housing stock through support for a range of home improvement grants and subsidies. As it relates to the health sector, allocations to the Assembly cater for the completion and operationalization of the Mariah Health Center and the Roxborough Hospital. The budget provides for the enhancement of the ICT capability throughout the health system, including the development of an integrated hospital information system, which will include an electronic medical record system. Allocations to the Assembly provide for improving the digital infrastructure to allow better leverage in the use of ICT in its development to support for its Intelligent Island initiative. For fiscal 2021, the budgetary allocation to the Bago House of Assembly is $2.134 billion. Disaggregated, $1.916 billion is allocated for recurrent expenditure, $200 million for capital expenditure, and $18 million for the unemployment relief program. This allocation is 4.3% of the national budget, consistent with the recommendations of the Dispute Resolution Commission. In addition to these direct allocations to the Tobago House of Assembly, another $754.5 million is allocated for expenditure in Tobago by various government ministries and statutory authorities in keeping with their legal obligations under the 6th schedule of the TAHA Act 40 of 1996. These projects will be geared primarily towards enhancing Tobago's security and safety, as well as water supply and distribution. Moreover, the THA will have access to additional financial resources for development projects in Tobago through the recently approved by Cabinet bond facility, as well as support for the Assembly's alternative financing mechanism that will enable the Assembly to mobilize additional financial and technical resources to accelerate the pace of development, thereby increasing Tobago's contribution to national economic activity. It is also clear that Tobago businesses rely to a large extent on local and foreign tourism and tourism-related activities, and that they are struggling in the wake of border closures, suspension of air travel, restriction on public gatherings and the hospitality sector, closure of beaches, and the like. In this regard, Madam Speaker, discussions will continue between the Chief Secretary and myself as to what additional incentives, concessions, grants, and financial support we can provide for Tobago businesses, including a special government-guaranteed financial support window within the commercial banks. Let me repeat that. Discussions will continue between the Chief Secretary and myself as to what additional incentives, concessions, grants, and financial support we can provide for Tobago businesses, including a special government-guaranteed financial support window within the commercial banks. Before I end my discourse on Tobago, I wish to give the people of Tobago an update and the assurance from this administration that the self-government bill, which was before a joint select committee prior to the dissolution of Parliament in July, will be accorded the highest priority in this new legislative term. It is our sincere hope we would get the necessary bipartisan support of the opposition as we seek passage of this critical piece of legislation for Tobago and Trinidad and Tobago in order to deepen the democratic process and provide greater autonomy to the people of Tobago. I now turn to the medium-term framework. Madam Speaker, economic forecasting is a very difficult exercise at a time like this. Much has changed since the emergence of the virus in our country in March 2020, with the associated containment and restrictive measures in the following months. We have witnessed the collapse of aggregate demand and shocks to our supply chain, both locally and internationally. Looking forward, there is a high degree of uncertainty about our economic recovery and our medium-term outlook. I am in no doubt that the full success of the programs and policies which I have just laid out would depend on our containment of the virus, and more so on a medical breakthrough with the availability of affordable, safe, and effective vaccines. But we are assured that with firm and decisive management, focus on the main elements of our economic program, we will emerge in much better shape in 2021-2022. However, like most other governments in the world, we have no doubt whatsoever that exceptional government support and fiscal stimulus packages will be required over the next 2 years to induce economic demand. In addition, businesses will need encouragement to increase remote working capabilities for their employees, and as a government, we will need to find ways to assist the unemployed to find jobs in companies with viable business models and to incentivize companies to create new jobs. Small and medium enterprises in particular will require continued support through guaranteed loan facilities. But to now to diversification. From the plans I outlined earlier, it is quite evident that diversification of the economy is our highest priority. The focus in the medium term will be on those industries earmarked to achieve that objective. I've mentioned some of them: agriculture, manufacturing, creative industries, and so on. We will put in place fiscal incentives while continuing to remove impediments to the ease of doing business in important dimensions of the regulatory environment as it applies to local firms. We are targeting an improvement in our position of 105 in the 2020 World Bank report on doing business. We are and will make every effort at improving the existing measurable benchmarks, many of which are totally unacceptable, such as 10 days for starting a business, 254 days for receiving construction permits, 61 days for receiving an electricity connection, 77 days for registering a property, 65 days to obtain credit, 3.5 years to enforce contracts, and 2.5 years to resolve insolvencies. This list is totally unacceptable, Madam Speaker, and we will work assiduously to deal with these issues. With the reform of these regulatory processes, we are ensuring that Trinidad and Tobago becomes a competitive hub for trade and investment, an attractive location for businesses to take root and flourish. For immediate action and with diversification and productivity improvements at the forefront, we are targeting, in collaboration with the domestic and international private sector, manufacturing in particular for exports, energy services for export, aluminium, steel and chemicals, construction, housing, environmentally friendly and green technology, recycling, technology in particular, software, mobile applications, electronic transactions, and cybersecurity, creative and cultural industries, in particular music, film, art and theater, agriculture, financial and other services, shipbuilding and ship repair, tourism, including medical, sports and leisure events, and food and beverages. Those are the areas we are targeting for diversification. I turn now to public-private partnerships. Madam Speaker, while we recognize the importance of investment in these activities for facilitating growth and development, we are in no doubt that our public resources and fiscal space are now extremely limited. Over the medium term, our revenue streams from oil and gas production will continue to be constrained, but we are overcoming the constraints posed by dwindling oil and gas revenues. We are closing the funding gap. We are now encouraging the private sector to become an additional source of funding as partners in this new pipeline of growth-enhancing activities. These public-private partnerships will relieve the funding constraints in our economic program. This mechanism will bring private sector technology, greater efficiency, and innovation into the provision of better public services. In particular, Madam Speaker, the private sector has become increasingly and successfully involved in the operations of cargo handling operations at port facilities worldwide. Public port agencies have been moving away from the service port model under which national port authorities provide all commercial services as well as regulatory functions, but increasingly have been utilizing the landlord model. The government has decided to adopt this approach with the Port Authority, retaining its regulatory and asset management functions, but with managerial, operational, and financial responsibility for commercial activities such as terminals and equipment in the port area under a new investor. The Ministry of Works and Transport will therefore be mandated to take immediate steps to rationalize by the end of fiscal 2021 the operations of the Port Authority of Trinidad and Tobago and to introduce a private sector operator into the port handling operations now carried out by the Port of Port of Spain, leaving the ferry service to the Trinidad and Tobago Inter-Island Company Limited and the lands for the Port of Spain Infrastructure Company. We will also take steps to ensure that the operations at Point Lisas Industrial Port Development Corporation are consistent with the operations of the port handling operations of the Port of Spain. And in keeping with this theme, Madam Speaker, I move now to the reform of the liquid petroleum product sector. Since 1974, Madam Speaker, the liquid petroleum products market has been subject to public economic policy. As a small oil and gas producing country, the view was held that our citizens should always benefit from the wealth of the country. This policy was concretized in the mid-1970s when the price of oil began to escalate in the international markets with a large degree of volatility. Price stability within the principle of affordability became a public economic objective, with prices of petroleum products being fixed by the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries, with the subsidy, where appropriate, being provided by the oil exploration and production companies under the Petroleum Production Levy and Subsidy Act, and any amount in excess of this subsidy being provided by the state. Under this framework, regulated pump prices were generally established below the levels of prevailing prices. Madam Speaker, the stated objectives of the policy were clear. Consumers, in particular low-income groups, would be protected from volatile and high prices with consistent access to affordable prices through the subsidy mechanism. Illustratively, since 2006, the subsidy has been provided at great fiscal cost, and in the fiscal period 2006 to 2020, subsidy payments made by government has been in the vicinity of $25 billion. Let me repeat that. Fuel subsidy payments made by government have been in the vicinity of $25 billion over the last 14 years. We have analyzed the subsidy impact on the national community, and we have formed the judgment that not only did the subsidies disproportionately benefit the higher income groups, but their usage was inefficient from an economy-wide perspective. In recent times, however, in fact, since September 2014, energy prices have declined and are now stabilizing at significantly lower levels, with the upshot that subsidy payments will be considerably reduced. Madam Speaker, at current international oil prices, subsidies do not arise in the sale of premium gasoline or super gasoline, but they continue to prevail in the sale of diesel, kerosene, and LPG. We are of the view that in the context of the projected international oil prices, the fuel market should now be liberalized. Under this arrangement, which is targeted for introduction in January 2021, the fixed retail margins for all liquid petroleum projects will be removed. Petroleum retailers and dealers will now be allowed to fix their own margins. Wholesale margins will remain fixed for the time being, and an appropriate but reasonable tax introduced to compensate for the current fuel surplus that is generated on the sale of gasoline because of depressed oil prices. The net result should be little or no increase in the price of motor fuels at current oil prices. However, it must be noted that if the price of oil recovers, the price of gasoline and diesel will naturally increase proportionately. The new trading arrangements between the importer of fuel petroleum products and the wholesalers will result in price adjustments for such products up or down based on changes in the United States Gulf Coast product prices obtained from the Platts Oil Gram Price Report, which is reflective of international market product prices. For transparency purposes, the Ministry of Energy and Energy Industries will post the changes in the refinery prices of premium gasoline, super gasoline, diesel, and kerosene on the first day of each month, except for the production price of liquid petroleum gas, or LPG, which will remain under the subsidy mechanism. This new deregulated market will bring to an end 46 years of fuel subsidies and the high social expenditure of $25 billion in the last 15 years. But at current international prices, the liberalized framework will lay the foundation for consumer acceptance in the future. Madam Speaker, the liberalization of the liquid petroleum fuel market, especially at this time of envisaged stable and low prices for petroleum products, will set the stage for enhancing strategic investments to keep the industry efficient and competitive. We are now ensuring that the new pricing model will put the retailers on a self-sustaining and profit-oriented basis. Madam Speaker, all gas stations owned by National Petroleum Marketing Company will also now be offered for sale to the private sector, with first preference given to existing dealers and concessionaires. I move now to estimates of revenue and expenditure. Madam Speaker, our estimates of revenue are influenced by significant technical difficulties brought about by the spread of COVID-19, which has disrupted global commodity markets, including the gas and oil industry, which is now showing a decline in energy demand without parallel. In an industry used to the highs and lows of commodity price cycles, the year 2021 poses great challenges for predicting gas and oil prices. We recognize that oil and gas markets are currently affected by a variety of risks and opportunities, and by uncertainty and unforeseeable trends. In establishing oil and gas prices for 2021, we have reviewed the prices over the last decade, and we have seen their optimism and limitless investments during the years of $100 a barrel during the period 2011 to 2014, as well as the lows of prices during the period mid-2014 to 2020, which at one point in 2020 went into negative territory. We do not envisage that any one of these extremes will return. We have evaluated the prices being projected by the International Energy Agency, the International Monetary Fund, and the World Bank. And based on that information, we have decided that our oil assumption for our budget 2021 is US $45 a barrel. We have done a similar exercise for gas prices, looking at the forecasts, International Energy Agency, and so on. And our fiscal 2021 budget utilizes a gas price of US $3 per MMBTU. Madam Speaker, the allocation of resources for fiscal 2021 reflects our objective to consolidate and to reset the economy for growth and innovation. For fiscal 2021, and on the oil and gas price assumptions of US $45 per barrel and US $3 per MMBTU for gas, total revenue has been budgeted at $41.364 billion, up from $34.059 billion or $7.304 billion from the estimated revised outturn in 2020. Total expenditure for fiscal 2021 has been budgeted at $49.573 billion, a decrease of $1.258 billion over the fiscal 2020 outturn of $50.832 billion, but significantly lower than the peak expenditure of $61.939 billion in 2014. This is a substantial reduction in expenditure from that peak level and is approximately $12.4 billion or 20% less than the unsustainable 2014 expenditure undertaken by a previous administration. The fiscal deficit for 2021 is expected to decrease to $8.209 billion or 5.6% of gross domestic product, compared with a fiscal deficit of $16.772 billion or 11% of GDP in fiscal 2020, which reflected the expansion from the projected deficit of $5.287 billion as a result of the COVID-19 exceptional expenditures. Based on these assumptions, we are projecting total revenue of $41.364 billion, of which oil revenue will be $9.265 billion, non-oil revenue will be $31.193 billion, and capital revenue will be $0.905 billion. Total expenditure, net of capital repayments and sinking fund contribution, $49.573 billion, for a fiscal deficit in fiscal 2021 of $8.209 billion. Madam Speaker, despite our fiscal constraints, we are increasing our expenditure for 2021 moderately with a view to ensuring that the emerging growth momentum remains with associated and beneficial social and economic impacts on all aspects of our society. Of significance is that we have maintained the level of expenditure of $4.11 billion on our capital programs. And I may add, this does not include the $1 billion we intend to raise for the Housing Development Corporation, which would bring the capital program to $5.11 billion for 2021. The major fiscal 2021 allocations will be education and training, $7.973 billion, health, $6.050 billion, national security, $5.227 billion, works and transport, $2.956 billion, public utilities, $2.091 billion, rural development and local government, $1.642 billion, agriculture, $1.198 billion, housing, $1 billion. In 2021, Madam Speaker, we will secure a range of financing options for the fiscal deficit. We will tap into the domestic and international capital markets, as well as accessing facilities at the international institutions. Non-debt creating financing facilities are also being secured from our utilization of public-private partnerships and strategic asset sales. I now turn to the fiscal measures. This is what I propose for financial year 2021. Firstly, in the area of technological transformation and innovation. Madam Speaker, the participation of young people in the technological transformation and innovation process will be facilitated by improving and accelerating access to equipment, training, and funding. To achieve this objective, as part of our push for full digitalization of our economy and government services, all taxes on mobile and digital equipment, mobile phones, software, computer, accessories, and peripherals will be removed. A tax allowance will be provided to businesses which invest in tech startups and new tech businesses. The allowance is set at 150% with a cap of $3 million. A tax allowance will be provided to businesses which engage in technology solutions and digitalization. The allowance is also set at 150% with a cap of $3 million. And another tax allowance will be provided to businesses which create employment in the technology industry, particularly young people. This allowance is also set at 150% with a cap of $3 million. These measures will all take effect from January the 1st, 2021, and businesses can access all of them, all three. I now turn to a very innovative measure, Madam Speaker. Internet MiFi for students, and I did not misspeak. Internet MiFi. Madam Speaker, MiFi is a mobile device which uses the 3G, 4G mobile phone network to create a mini wireless hotspot. And this can be shared among mobile internet-enabled devices, such as smartphones, laptops, and tablets, which are within range of its signal. This facility is primarily for students who do not have internet access in their homes or surrounding areas. We are providing these devices to 45,000 students based on need, to provide them with connectivity which they do not now have. This program will come into effect in the first quarter of calendar 2021. Let me repeat, we're providing our students based on need with 45,000 mobile hotspots, courtesy the government of Trinidad and Tobago. 3, existing Wi-Fi hotspots and internet cafes. Madam Speaker, we are supporting the broad digital strategy by expanding existing Wi-Fi hotspots and establishing internet cafes in all areas of the country, and will specifically target students in all remote areas. This measure will come into effect in fiscal 2021. Now, Madam Speaker, to boost construction to drive the economy. Tax waiver on imported construction material for approved building projects. Madam Speaker, for approved housing, commercial, and industrial development projects, which start on or before December 31st, 2022, we are removing value-added tax on the importation of building materials to be used exclusively in connection with the projects, except for certain items such as road paving and aggregate material. This measure will be similar to the administration to the tax concessions granted to developers for approved tourism projects, and will take effect from January the 1st, 2021. Waiver of stamp duty for first-time homeowners. Madam Speaker, to encourage the private sector to invest in residential housing development, we are amending the stamp duty threshold for residential properties from the current 1.5 million to 2 million for first-time homeowners. This measure will save first-time homeowners up to $28,000 in stamp duty and will benefit up to 1,000 families per year. This measure will take effect on January 1st, 2021. Property development. We are supporting the construction sector and in particular property development. We propose to amend the Corporation Tax Act to allow approved property development companies to claim as a deduction 20% from the present 15% of the capital expenditure incurred in the construction of commercial, industrial, or multifamily residential buildings, which are completed on or before December the 31st, 2024. Tourism Accommodation Upgrade Project. Madam Speaker, we are expanding and extending the Tourism Accommodation Upgrade Project incentive. The extension will start on October 1st and expire on September 30th, 2023. This facility is a tourism incentive which provides a reimbursable grant to eligible tourism accommodation facilities. Wear and tear for plant and equipment. Madam Speaker, we propose to increase from 25% to 30% the allowable rate of wear and tear for plant and equipment. All of this is to boost investment and to boost industry. This measure will take effect on January 1st, 2021. I now move to illegal quarrying. Madam Speaker, we are putting in place mechanisms to deter illegal quarrying. Effective January 1st, 2021, we will increase all penalties, fines, and custodial sentences for illegal quarrying as provided for in the Minerals Act by 200%. Effective January 1st, 2021, we will also increase the penalties, fines, and custodial sentences for illegal quarrying of asphalt or other materials on state lands as provided for under the State Lands Act by 200%. Further, any company that knowingly trades in illegally sourced quarry material will be disqualified from participating in government construction projects. Predial larceny. In keeping with our new thrust in agriculture, we are protecting the agricultural produce from our farmers by increasing predial larceny fines and custodial sentences by 200%. This measure will take effect on January 1st, 2021. As I previously mentioned, Madam Speaker, we are adjusting the supplemental petroleum tax for small onshore oil producers. We will embark on a dynamic exploration and drilling program in the onshore oil sector for the creation of jobs, for boosting economic activity, and for increasing oil production. We thus propose to increase the threshold for the imposition of supplementary petroleum tax for small onshore oil producers to $75 per barrel, US 75, up from US $50 per barrel, for fiscal 2021 and fiscal 2022. In the first instance,